During our last 3 videos, we have gone over exactly why Mystra, the goddess of magic, went on to completely ban the use of any spell higher than 9th level. But the question now is, how does that work? If a wizard were to somehow unearth a leftover journal from the Netherese Empire and find himself with the research notes on a 10th level spell, what exactly would happen if that wizard were to attempt to cast such a spell? For all this time, mages across Faerun and priests of Mystra have gone over to believe that 10th level spells and anything higher is simply unachievable anymore. Why? Because Mystra said so. Gods don't really talk much, but directly after the events of Karsus' Folly, every cleric of Mystra got a very clear warning to never attempt anything like that again, and that anything higher than 9th level would be restricted. You combine this with the fact that any wizard that actually attempts any well-known 10th level spell from the past essentially just fails, and anytime a master wizard develops his own new 10th level spell, that spell also immediately fails, and for no discernible reason. It just doesn't work. This is why people are sure that such power will never be achieved again, since as far as they believe, Mystra completely banned such acts. But like I said before at the beginning of this series of videos, there is actually a workaround in order to cast spells such as these. That is because the ban is not an all-encompassing ban. Let's talk about how this ban actually works. When the new goddess of magic was reincarnated at the fall of the Netherese Empire, she needed to stop immediately their use of high magic. She did this by making the already existing 10th level spells inoperative and incomprehensible. Essentially, when a Netherese would attempt to cast a spell that they probably had been casting their whole lives, it would suddenly not take hold on the weave and simply fail. It is said that the glyphs and writings on their spell books suddenly didn't make any sense to them. She also made it so that studying and attempting to understand some of the symbols required to perform some of these high magics would create injurious results to the minds of those attempting to memorize them or read and tinker with them. Any person that would attempt to cast a 10th level spell would feel part of their life essence being swallowed by the weave, alongside of course other penalties. By doing these couple of things, she effectively made it so that people thought 10th level spells were impossible to cast, and that was actually her plan. She wanted people to think it wasn't possible, when in fact it actually was. See here, I'm gonna read you verbatim from The Secrets of the Magister, a book for the Forgotten Realms that talks a lot about Mystra. Quote, "History incorrectly records this as changing humans to make the use of such magic beyond their grasp, or changing the nature of magic to make spells of greater than 9th level unintelligible to humans. That is what the goddess wanted mortals to believe, to keep strivings after such forbidden spells to a minimum, and the waste of spellcasters' lives and efforts small." End quote. She wanted people to think it wasn't possible, when in fact, it really was. In essence, the casting of 10th level spells is theoretically possible, but effectively impossible, thanks to all of the restrictions that Mystra has enacted around them. Let's talk about those restrictions. First, Mystra made it so that only a master of the arcane could even attempt such a spell. It would have to be someone who could already cast all other kinds of spells, but more importantly, she made it so that great intellect wasn't the only required factor. All the Netherese wizards had intellect, but they lacked wisdom in how to use these spells, and of course, that ended with the massive problem that was Karsus' Folly. That mistake would never be repeated again. High wisdom would be necessary in order to cast a 10th level spell, otherwise the spell would fail mysteriously. Second, these spells would never be cast by a single wizard ever again. Long gone would be the days where a single archmage could change the layout of the world, where a single arcanist could hide in their lone ivory towers without interacting with the world while discovering the secrets of the weave and not sharing it. If any of these spells were to be attempted alone, unintended wild magic would result in its stead. The secret was that to effectively cast a 10th level spell now, a wizard needed a second spellcaster to assist him. The second spellcaster would have to also be a master in magic, and would use a spell or a multitude of spells in order to link his will, mind, and life energy to the main caster and work as a form of anchor. Both wizards would have to be one in order to make it happen. Third, The first time a duo of wizards attempted a 10th level spell, they would always fail. Every first time will always be a failure. Fourth, 9 out of 10 attempts at casting 10th level spells, regardless of whether it succeeded or failed, would result in the life essence of all casters involved being penalized by the casting of the spell. Essentially, every single time that you would make an attempt, you would lose power, which you would recuperate after a long period of time. Now, I know that you guys are not fans of me talking about this sort of thing from the meta perspective, from the gaming perspective, but I have to for this particular point. The idea here is that you would have to be level 20 to be able to even attempt a 10th level spell, but after every single attempt, you would lose a level. That would be Mistra's penalty for even attempting something like this. Now, this effectively would mean that you would never be able to cast 10th level spells back to back, since a 19th level spell caster attempting to cast a 10th level spell would automatically fail because he wasn't 20th level. And of course, that would lose him yet another level just because he tried. And then you would also have to keep in mind that the first try will always be an automatic failure, so that's an automatic level that any wizard attempting something like this would always lose. Now, these rules were of course not known to anybody but probably only the Magister, who is considered to be Mistra's main mage on the material realm. Because these rules were a complete secret and every mage that attempted to cast any of these spells probably failed multiple times and subsequently lost power because of it, everyone believed it was just impossible. On top of all of this, even if you had that obstinate wizard who somehow knew all of the rules and actually tried and tried until he finally made it happen, even if you had a situation like that, you still had to contend with Mystra to allow it to happen. Quote, "All casting attempts attract the attention of both Mystra and Aseth. If they deem the casting to be for purely personal ends, or have the death or destruction of a rival mage or magical items as their primary goal, or to be in support of any tyranny or oppressive authority, in other words, to work against the free and individualistic ongoing developments of magic use across Faerun, they will cause the end result to be feeble-mindedness of all the casters involved and the instant disappearance of the written spell." End quote. So even if you were to somehow learn the secret and somehow actually succeed in casting a 10th level spell, Mystra could simply just shut it off if the intention wasn't appropriate. And you also have to keep in mind that Mystra wanted the fact that 10th level spells were still possible to be a complete secret. So she would completely shut down any attempt that would make this well known to the public. Now, with this mega list of restrictions in place, 10th level spells were effectively banned for thousands of years. But the interesting thing here is that this Mystra, the Mystra that was born after the fall of Netheril and the Mystra that created this ban in the first place, this Mystra is dead. I know that this can get a bit confusing because Mystra basically dies every other age, so let's put it into perspective here. First, we had Mistral. She was basically the OG and she allowed anyone to cast anything without any restrictions. The events of Netheril unfolded and she had to sacrifice herself to save the Weave. Mystra was born as the new goddess of magic and she enacted the ban on anything higher than 9th level spells. Now this Mystra ruled until the Time of Troubles, which was a chaotic event that happened about 150 years ago to the present day. Essentially, Mystra went against the wishes of Lord Au, the overlord of gods, and hence she was killed by Helm, the god of guardians and protectors. Mystra at the time was grooming a very powerful wizard called Midnight, and Lord Au decided to make her the new goddess of magic. Midnight decided to call herself Mystra so as to not confuse her clerics anymore, which of course will confuse us. Now Mystra/Midnight was assassinated by Cyric, the god of lies, and by Shar, the goddess of darkness, in a massive coup to attempt to take control of the Weave. But just like with Karsus, they underestimated the Weave and everything went out of control. The Weave going out of control is what we call the Spell Plague, which lasted about 10 years. Arcane magic basically just didn't work for those 10 years, and tens of thousands of spellcasters simply died randomly. Those that didn't die went mad, and those that didn't go mad lost their ability to cast spells forever. The destruction of the Weave emanated as a wave of blue flame that tore across countries and completely dislodged provinces. The whole world world went out of control for a while there. Funny, it was actually the spell plague that brought the Dragonborn over to Faerûn, but that's a whole other story. Watch my Dragonborn video to learn a little bit about that. Eventually, about 140 years later, Midnight/Mystra managed to revive thanks to the help of some heroes who collected enough leftover divine essence to give to her, and for the last 10 years, Midnight/Mystra has been gathering energy in order to be whole again, which literally just happened. Midnight/Mystra became whole again literally 2 years before the events of Horde of the Dragon Queen, which was the campaign that started 5th edition. My point in bringing all of this up is we have a new goddess of magic, and this goddess of magic hasn't really been active literally until just now. And before Horde of the Dragon Queen, magic had been very unstable, and had been for the past 150 years since the Spell Plague. My point again is, we actually don't really know if the rules have changed. And even if they haven't, we have a completely new goddess that might have a different perspective on 10th level spells. Midnight might want to continue the ban, preventing anything like what happened to the Netherese from happening again. Or she might want to allow a new magic empire to rise up. The truth? We don't know. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I would like to personally thank my Patreon supporters, Rukato Fan, Daniel Luna, Dr. Cowbell, Skizio Boy, Major Fail Gaming, Saeliog, Barry Maskand, 5E Magic Shop, Dog Feeder, Daniel Umar, Morgan Johnson, Zach Bowell, Simon Holman, Rusty Rain, Biotechnofrag, Kosh Bane, and Meaty Ogre Ad Best for supporting me on Patreon at the $25 level. If you would like to support me as well, then please head on over to patreon.com/MrRhexx to support. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This was a particularly interesting video to make, and a nice way to just sort of close this chapter on the ban of Mystra by giving you guys the actual rules that you can then use to break them. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to go ahead and watch the playlist for all of my D&D videos. If you like these videos, you are gonna like those as well. I've made a bunch of them, so I'm sure that you're gonna have a ton of time there to just have a blast watching and learning all about Dungeons and Dragons. And also, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. I have been uploading like crazy. We've been getting so many videos done lately, so just go ahead and subscribe and just enjoy the horde of information that I'm about to unleash upon all of you. And yeah, with that said, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.